Hello, welcome to When Legends Talk, a book by the legend of Savage Machine, the original Mexican metal band from Northern California. Just a word of caution, this book contains topics and scenarios that may be triggering to some people. Discretion advised. Chapter 11. Ben. After my mom picked me up, we went to visit a few of my mom's siblings. I don't remember a lot about those visits other than being amazed at how they lived. My cousins had a bicycle for each of them. They had a TV. One place we went to had chickens, and my mom was already savoring fresh eggs. After taking me to the dentist, mom took us to Tijuana, where we met with a coyote. Coyotes are people who cross people illegally into the U.S. I remember we met at a hill with a large group of other people looking to cross the border and followed the coyote. Mom was very concerned about me since the coyote advised that the path was going to be very treacherous, but I was not deterred. We hiked along trails, climbed over and down hillsides, and eventually reached the rest point. The coyote waited for night time and instructed us to continue. We crawled under some barbed wire fences and had to crouch the whole way to avoid being seen. A while later, the coyote yelled out for us to hide under bushes, and maybe a minute later, a rippling, thundering sound roared, and a large searchlight shone down along the path looking for people like us. I felt like a field mouse trying to escape the clutches of a relentless hawk. Once the helicopter passed, we continued and eventually reached an area where we were directed into a big metal tube with water lightly flowing out of it into a pond. Most people had to crouch down to fit in there, but I was privileged enough to not have to worry about that too much. We traveled for a long while, and the tunnel got smaller and darker. I could hear squealing and people screaming, but I had no idea why until I felt it. A rat ran up my leg, so I kicked it off and held onto my mom's arm. My mom told me that it was going to be okay, that God was protecting us, and we should keep moving. Eventually, we came out the other side of the tunnel and were instructed to crouch down in a particular area. A car would pull up, and a few people at a time would be instructed to run to the car. At the car, my mom sat in the front of the passenger seat, and I crouched down on the floor while other people packed into the back seat and the trunk. The car took us to a holding house where the whole group waited impatiently for their loved ones to arrange for them to get picked up. There are two things I remember the most about that place. One, we were not allowed to go outside to avoid being seen. And two, fleas. Lots and lots of fleas. That was also a first for me. We were the last ones to go until Uncle collected enough money to arrange for us to get picked up and taken to the airport for my first airplane ride from San Diego to San Francisco. From San Francisco Airport, we got a cab to drive us about an hour away to our destination. Mom and my sister lived with my mom's older sister and her two sons. Mom pulled out some Christmas gifts she had saved for me, including a remote control semi truck, a heavy winter blanket, and a He Man blanket, which I still have to this day. Shortly after, several family members started coming by to visit. Some I was meeting for the first time, and some I thought I was meeting for the first time. I was more than excited to see my older sister, but she was a lot quieter than I remembered, and I was completely in awe that my little sister could actually talk. Soon enough, my mom signed me up for school, where I started in the fourth grade. I thought everyone spoke Spanish, so I just started going up to everyone and introducing myself. I went up to one kid and said, ¿Cómo te llamas? What's your name? He answered, I forgot. What I heard, Africa. Another Mexican kid came up to me and asked what I was doing, and I responded, I'm talking to this kid named Africa. Mexican kid corrected me, saying, he's saying I forgot. Don't you speak English? I said no, and we became instant friends. More about Mexican kid later. I was signed up for ESL classes and learned to speak English fairly quickly, but the reading and writing took a lot longer. English was so confusing. How is it that bow and bow have completely different meanings but are spelled exactly the same? Why is it that Mercedes has all the same vowel, but that vowel makes a different sound each time? Even the word school was not a direct pronunciation to sound translation, and while reading, the teacher would tell us, sound it out. Yeah, okay. At least Spanish is spelled how it sounds. Recess was a lot of fun. I became a big fan of playing tetherball. It was just a ball attached to a rope that you had to hit it to wrap the rope around the pole while the other kid was trying to do the same in their direction. Simple but effective. One kid seemed to not like me for whatever reason and would yell out insults. I just let it go because I didn't want to get in trouble, but then he called my mom a hippo, so I whooped his ass because that's the way it works in Mexico. The disrespect is not to be tolerated because it will only lead to further abuse, and there was no way I was going to let anyone talk any type of shit about my mom after all that she went through for me. A teacher came up and said some stuff in English I couldn't understand while pulling me off the kid, and I got taken to the principal's office. I was told to sit quietly, and then my mom walked in the door, and I understood I was in trouble. My mom sat down and asked me what happened, and I put my face in her lap and cried my eyes out because I was sure she was going to send me back to Mexico. After she called me down, she told me that she did not want me to be fighting anymore because we are no longer in Mexico. Things work differently here. I looked up at her face and saw both concern and pride. I knew she appreciated that I stood up for her, but was also concerned that I would have a tough time adjusting to this new world. She wasn't wrong. I was oblivious to a lot of social cues because there was no need for that in Mexico. I said what I wanted, when I wanted, and how I wanted to without thinking about anyone else or how would they feel about it. That became evident later when we would go to visit my mom's sisters, and her kids would call me out when I unknowingly would piss them off because of something I said or did. One night, they all decided to watch a movie at home, which was very exciting to me. The movie Poltergeist. Keep in mind that this was the first real people movie I would have seen till this point in my life. I had seen a couple of cartoons when my mom and I visited the family in Mexico before crossing the border, but that was it. So that movie scared the living hell out of me. But it also gave me a rush that I thoroughly enjoyed because it made me feel alive. My mom's family came from musical backgrounds. so it was common for random song breakouts whenever a few of them would get together. During one of those occasions, Auntie asked me to sing, and I was happy to oblige with my favorite song, La Mochila Azul, from Pedrito Fernandez. To this day, one of my cousins says that's his first memory of me is when I sang that song. During one of those days, Mom came to tell me that Dad passed away, and I thanked her for telling me, but I kept singing. It was easier to ignore the news than to deal with the pain and then and there. Although I wasn't there the entire time, I literally saw my dad reverse age, going from being a healthy adult to kneeling in a cane, to cane while holding on to the back of my neck, into a wheelchair, lower body paralysis, to being unable to use his arms, to not being able to hold up his own head, to not being able to speak, to not being able to eat on his own. The last time I saw him, I could see regret in his eyes. I knew what he felt, and it softened my wall. He may have put us through a lot of hell, but he was still my dad, and I miss him to this day. Often, I wish he was still alive so I could teach him what I've learned in life and show him that there is so much more that is so much better than what we had. There was a time I felt guilty, like he had reached out his hand to me during that time and I pulled away. But there's nothing I can do about the past other than reflect on the lessons learned and use those lessons to be a better person myself.
Existe un grande vacío en mi corazón. Tengo dolor que nunca yo podré vencer. Muy triste seguiré, sabiendo que nunca podré regresar a ese momento cuando te amé. Pasado por tu querer. Ven conmigo, digo a mi lado, no me vuelvo a perder. Si fuiste como querer y yo te negué, tomaste mi mano y yo te la solté. Nunca pensé que fuera a decir, estoy muriendo por ti. Necesito estar a tu lado para vivir. Ven conmigo, renuncio mi pasado por tu querer. Vuelvo a perder. Ven conmigo, renuncio mi pasado por tu querer. Ven conmigo, digo a mi lado, no me vuelvo a perder.